Hello everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. As you guys may or may not know, I have been reviewing cars for a long time, almost 35 years, during which I've driven everything from the cheapest cars to the most expensive cars. And not too many vehicles really impressed me to the point where I say, okay, this thing is unique and special. Well, here I am with a 2024 Range Rover, and in one of those rare occasions, I'm actually going to say, this thing is unique, special, and exclusive. And it truly impressed me because of the driving character, the luxurious features, and most of all, because this thing feels very different from many other cars in the same price range. So I'm going to give you 7 reasons why I feel and I think the Range Rover is unique and has almost no competition out there. Let's go. Welcome back. So why do I think the Range Rover as a brand is so unique and special in such a fiercely competitive marketplace? Well, for example, compare this to, let's say, a Lexus, because as you guys know, I own a number of them, and you can immediately tell a major difference between people's attitude towards something more mainstream, like a Lexus, to something more exclusive, like a Range Rover. Because when you drive this thing around, people still look at it, even though it's been around for a long time, as a brand, I should say. People still stare at it, look at it, and sometimes they will just come up to me and say, hey, beautiful vehicle. I never really get that when I'm driving a Lexus, even if I'm driving the flagship LX. Maybe the only exception is when I'm driving the LC500. Yeah, people still look at it because it's a unique sports car. But among the luxury brand, not too many models get recognition on the road and also have a respect. I would even say that Bentley doesn't get as much recognition as a Range Rover, because I drove that as a press vehicle for a while, and it just doesn't seem to get the same kind of feedback from people compared to Range Rover. There's something about this brand that people fall in love with, and they look up to this brand as something they want to own down the road. And this is something that Lexus really needs to learn, because even though they've been building up to their brand for a long time, somehow people don't recognize Lexus in the same category as a Range Rover, even though they overlap in many instances in terms of the type of models they offer, because even Range Rover offers a very affordable model called Evoque down into $50,000, $60,000 price range. So they do compete indirectly perhaps, but the recognition and the brand awareness and the admiration and the inspiration people have for the brand is very different for something like a Range Rover compared to more mainstream luxury brands like a Lexus, Infiniti, Audi, or BMW. And even though we think of, like, let's say a Rolls-Royce or Bentley as something even more capable and even more recognizable, well, I really think that the cool, unique, and exclusive recognition still goes to Range Rover. Do you want proof? Well, just find someone, a friend maybe, or someone who has a Range Rover, and go for a drive, and you'll realize quickly that people move over even when I'm changing lanes, and they come to say hi to you, or they give you a thumbs up. It's just a different kind of lifestyle and experience driving a Range Rover than any other luxury brand, especially in this price range. So that's my first point. The second reason why Range Rover is unique, and maybe it doesn't even have a real competition in this price range, is because of its classic design. There are not too many vehicles that's instantly recognizable as a particular model, and also they seem to defy logic and they seem to defy timing, in a sense that no matter how many years pass, they're still recognizable and they still look great. One of them, of course, is Porsche 911. That design has evolved, but it's still recognizable as a 911, and it's a classic, timeless design. Range Rover is another design, because even though this is all new for 2023, which is last year, you know what, doesn't matter which model of Range Rover you look at it, people recognize right away as a Range Rover brand. And the 2024 is no exception. It carries some important recognizable features in terms of the design, classic lines, and so forth. And even though it evolved quite a bit over time, especially for new design, it's still instantly recognizable as a Range Rover. And again, no other brand seems to be able to do that. Brands like Lexus or Audi, they keep changing their design to a point where people don't really know what is Lexus or what is BMW, especially BMW, because they used to be so recognizable as a classic design as well. But lately they're introducing some strange designs, and to be honest, I'm not too crazy about them. Most people are not too crazy about their new designs, whereas a Range Rover has stayed true to its classic lines. And you know what, when you look at it from an engineer's perspective, it's a very simple design. Big flat panels, one strong seek line going all the way. And when you look at the front design, or the rear for that matter, Honestly, it's not a complicated design. We don't get huge grills coming down this way or flashy headlight. It's actually just a classy design that's recognizable as a Range Rover. And for whatever reason, the combination of things they put together makes it just absolutely gorgeous. If you look at the back, for example, this is something that's always a little bit interesting about Range Rover design. The tail lamp is also just very simple. In this case, one small vertical light and then spanning across with the name Range Rover back to this way. You're not getting a huge tail lamps over here, and yet it is once again still recognizable as a Range Rover, and it just looks absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. I'm not sure what you think of design, but definitely is timeless, time-defiant design is one unique aspect of the Range Rover. The third reason why Range Rover stands as a very unique brand is because of the same idea as the exterior, which is a timeless, time-defiant interior design. There's nothing super fancy about the interior in a sense that there aren't lots of chromes or fancy features or highlights, but you get this classic design with a simple infotainment system in the center stack, but all the leather and the wood that's wrapping the interior makes the whole thing look absolutely gorgeous. You get somehow darker black seats combined with lighter cream colored leather, but the texture of the materials and fit and finish and everything makes it look absolutely unique. So in most luxury brands these days, you don't get full leather over here, but you do in this Range Rover, where it should at this price range, and classic satin finish trims and leather again mixed with other chrome finishes. If you look at the back, for example, it's even more unique. It's obviously designed to be used as a chauffeur in many instances. You can follow me here and I'll show you the back, because once again, a lot of people might appreciate having this as a chauffeur car. Maybe not in North America, but in Europe and Asia, they would definitely do that. And I moved the seat forward now, so I get almost a first-class cabin kind of feel. Although at least in this particular model, I don't get sort of an Ottoman style where this thing comes up and the leg can be lifted. I don't have that feature, but still it's extremely comfortable, lots of space and lots of leather everywhere. And again, kind of classic timeless design. Beautiful stereo system as well. And in this regard, I wish Lexus and other brands will learn from Range Rover, because Range Rover is showing that you don't have to have a lot of fancy features to make it look gorgeous and luxurious. Whereas if you look at the BMWs and Mercedes these days, they have lots of crystals and lots of chrome, and it's a bit of an overkill, whereas this one is understated elegance. Okay, now I'm driving a Range Rover on the road, and this brings to my fifth reason why I think this one has a unique position in its marketplace, because I've driven so many vehicles in this price range from, let's say, $150,000 all the way to $500,000, and many of them claim to have the best ride, best comfort, best NVH, which is noise, vibration, harshness. But I actually think this is the best one I've experienced so far, because the air suspension on this particular vehicle is exceptional. You almost feel like you're floating in the air, that the car is actually not touching the ground. And that is despite the huge wheels and tire package that this particular model has. And like I'm just driving right now on a smooth road, but even a bumpy road, it's an exceptional ride. I really think it's a benchmark now in terms of total comfort and total luxury. That is unmatched by anything else. You can drive pretty well anything from Audi, BMW, Mercedes, maybe even Bentley that I've driven a while back, and Rolls-Royce models as well. And I actually still think that this one has a better ride. Also, the V8 in this particular model, which is a 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 engine with 523 horsepower, has a phenomenal power and torque, 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds or so. You step on it, it just takes off, but it does it with actual class. It does it with no fanfare. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It just kind of takes off. Transmission shifting, also another very important point. 8-speed automatic that has this really almost unnoticeable shift change, because the shifting happens so smoothly and it's so refined. So definitely when you drive this vehicle, or maybe you're a passenger in the back, you notice that, hey, this one feels different than all the other luxury models out there, and therefore it deserves to be called a unique and a very special vehicle indeed. Number 6 is the fact that the Range Rover was engineered to be a little bit different to begin with. So for example, if you look at the hood and the front fender, and they do a lot in many Range Rover models, but this one kind of goes over the front fender so that there's no more actual gap If you look at the front fender very, very closely, you'll see that this part actually bevels upward into the hood. So you're not actually looking at a gap like this, but it's more like a slanted gap. And so I can't even actually measure the gap. It's not really possible because the gap is inside the hood, if you know what I mean. And that provides a sleek design. It doesn't make your eyes go toward a gap because there is no gap. And really, Range Rover was the first model to engineer that kind of design, and it's really unique. Now there's a gap over here, of course, but once again, by adding this cladding over here, it breaks your eye. So even though there is a gap over here, which I will measure in a second, you don't see it. You don't see the gap here. You don't see the gap here because this is kind of masking this whole area. And so your eye is not drawn to the gap. And then you get simple line all the way through edge to edge. And back over here, you get a little bit of design here. And then over here, it wraps around. So this kind of design is pretty unique, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. But from engineer perspective, it's just smart because you don't see the gap here as well. It's covered in black elements. And once again, you don't really notice the body gap and body alignment, mostly because of the way this was engineered. Also, I had a chance to talk to some of the engineers who were involved in product development and also engineering and manufacturing. And they spent enormous amount of energy simplifying the whole product development cycle, but also engineering to make sure that this is stiff, has a very good structural rigidity, and that the whole process included what we call DFA, DFM, which is design for assembly, design for manufacturability, to make it easier to build than ever before, which will then contribute to higher manufacturing quality. So I think in terms of engineering, this model is also unique because they brought all the best practices and benchmarking ideas from around the world and put it into practice. The seventh and the last point is something that you might not expect for me to talk about, which is quality, because that's one thing that has been a weak spot for Range Rover or Land Rovers as well. And in terms of reliability, they're usually not at the top. In fact, they're usually near the bottom. However, for this particular model, I'm going to say that it may be the first time that they will actually have a reliable model because of, again, the engineering behind it, but also the manufacturing behind it. And how do I know that? Well, I've been to the Range Rover factory where this is produced a number of times in UK, and I watched as they implemented a new type of system similar to Toyota Production System or TPS. And for the first time, they actually built in quality at the source, at the manufacturing level. And you can actually tell because I'm going to measure the gap here. And this is only 3.1 millimeters, which is same all the way through here. The gap here is 3.2 millimeter, and this thing lines up almost perfectly right here as well. And this is also 3.1 millimeters. So this is as good as the best Lexus models from the Tahara factory in Japan, which I would consider to be the best manufacturing plant in the world. And even the gap in the back, which is actually really hard to get it right, even for Lexus or Toyota models, this thing is 3.3 millimeters. And everything lines up, which is incredibly difficult to do. And the actual panel alignment and also the panel design looks fantastic because it's really hard to design and manufacture panels this big. It's big this way, it's big from this way to this way. So to do that and give you that very flush design and with no warpages, that's actually really difficult to do. It's an engineer's nightmare to have panels this big, but look at it, it's just beautifully done. And even the gas cap on the other side, which is often difficult to get it right, looks fantastic on this vehicle. But this is kind of telltale sign if the manufacturing was done right, because oftentimes in other brands, this thing sticks out too much or the gap is too big. But look at it, it's complete flush and it's not sticking out. So once again, as far as exterior manufacturing quality is concerned, it looks fantastic. The interior as well, there's no rattles or squeak that I've noticed during my drive. I think this might be the best built Range Rover so far, and therefore I still think it's one of the unique strengths for this particular model, because many of its competitors in this price range, not including Lexus, suffers from poor body design and poor manufacturing quality with lots of wide gaps. But this one has a tight design that looks as good as Lexus. So why am I praising the Range Rover so much? Well, that's because I think at least in this price range, between kind of 150 to 200,000 Canadian, there's not too many competition that can meet or exceed this model's performance, character, driving feel, and most of all, as I mentioned, brand recognition and classic design that seems to defy logic and defy timing. This thing has a 523 horsepower, 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 engine, and thankfully it still has a V8 engine compared to many other brands that have moved to a V6 engine or twin turbo V6. So the engine is beautiful, has amazing power and torque. The suspension is calibrated to an amazing degree of comfort, which I talked about earlier, and that's why I think the Range Rover is unique in its position, even though many brands from North America, from Europe, from Asia, all trying to be like a Range Rover. I still think that this has a unique spot in this industry. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you do, please give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.